Hi everyone, here is the recording for the segment about spelling for this week, and I'm wondering what your initial thoughts are regarding the use of the word spelling and what that might provocate in your memories from school. And maybe this week you can think about how you grew as a writer and learning to spell, and whether the notions of development and pedagogy that we talk about this week relate to your experiences as well. I'm wondering if you experienced the same. So when we look at the achievement standards for spelling in ACARA, you'll notice the gradual development of particular types of knowledge, and the interesting word that is applied to many of the different standards is the word accurately. Now, I wonder if you think why that might be. There's a notion, isn't there, that spelling is something that should be done perfectly, that there's a right way and a wrong way of spelling. What's interesting from my point of view is that really good spellers aren't always totally worried about their accuracy when they're writing. If they're writing to write a story, their focus will not always be on accuracy. So that's something to remember when you're looking at the work that your students might do as their story writing or writing for learning, that accuracy might take a back seat in some cases to more focus on the composition of work, something to remember. So we go from the foundation level where we're looking at sounds and letter knowledge and how that might be indicative of a student writing the most obvious sounds in the word, to getting some regular spelling patterns in Year 1, spelling familiar words and attempting less familiar words in Year 2, to high frequency words and a higher use of knowledge of sounds in Grade 3, accurate spelling and accurate spelling and accurate spelling in Years 4, 5 and 6. So we're really by this assuming that a fair amount of that spelling and the spelling sounds, the sound symbol relationships will be worked on. The basics ones will be worked on by Year 3, and 4, 5 and 6 we're going to be working on some higher level information, which you'll see as we go through. In the foundation year we're looking at onset and rhyme, and you might remember this. This is onset and rhyme are when we can break down a syllable into its first initial consonant sound, and the rhyme that follows is the vowel sound and the remaining letters and sounds. For example, you can see that I've divided that example into the onset and rhyme, and the rhyme is ot, and the first sound there being the onset. I hope I said that right. The rhyme, R-I-M-E, is the O-T, and the onset is the first initial sound. And that's a really useful tool for students because you can learn to spell a lot of words very quickly once you learn some of the most common rhymes. In Year 1, we're looking at one syllable words, letters and common letter clusters, and that's things like common letter clusters like sh and th, and those ones that we see quite often. And we're hoping in Year 1 that the students start using their visual memory to write those high frequency words. And in Year 2 we see a greater increase in the complexity. We're talking here about digraphs. Now these should be common and should be known to you from experiencing the last English unit, but digraphs are when we have two letters that come together to make that one sound. The examples I gave before of sh being S and H is a digraph. Long vowel sounds like the A sound, which might be AE or AY. Blends, the two or 3 even, consonant sounds that are placed together quite commonly but that still retain their individual sounds, and that's things like, let me think of a blend. Blend starts with a blend, bull, B and L together there. Silent letters, although it depends on whether you want to call them silent letters, because once they're involved in a particular blend or a digraph, you can count them as the letters that are actually making those sounds. Morphemes and syllabification. We're looking at morphemes in the tutorial this week. Syllabification is a fancy word of saying being able to break the word up into its syllables, and visual memory to write irregular words. So there's a great increase very quickly in the knowledge of spelling that is required. In Year 3, letter sound relationships again, compound words, prefixes and suffixes. I wonder if you remember those from school, okay, the things that you add to the beginning or the end of words. Morphemes, as I said, which we'll touch on in class. Morphemes are the smallest meaningful unit of a word, and less common combinations. You can have a look at some of the examples there. Those references that I've made there to inflectional endings, that's going to be content in our tutorial this week. Jumping to Year 5, we're looking at uncommon plurals. So this is when we have things like the words ending in F, like chief, and how we turn that into a plural. And Year 6, banks of known words, and here is the work that is done, and you probably remember this from upper school: word origins, base words, prefixes and suffixes, morphemes, spelling patterns, and generalizations that help students to be able to spell new words. Okay, so all of that's in the Australian Curriculum English, and you can spend some time looking at that this week and picking out the spelling content to get a notion of what you'll need to be teaching. In terms of development, the best place to look is the First Steps spelling book, and you've been given a link to this information. You can download the free spelling book, and it talks about how much of that developmental content is related to what we expect children to be able to do at particular times. So from a preliminary spelling where the sound symbol relationships haven't yet developed, to understanding those sound symbol relationships and being able to match them perfectly is a developmental process that we see children go through. And as I said, the First Steps document, spelling document, is the best place to go to look at that. You can see how the ACE has kind of followed along with these developmental notions of spelling. Transitional spellers are moving away from relying on the sound of a word and being able to use strategies that they've learned over the years and know what generally looks right. That's a really important phase it takes quite a long time to work through this transitional phase. So although it looked in the ACE like we would learn lots at the beginning and then everything would be done, this transitional phase is quite a lot of work. It's learning to build your own bank of words that you know how to spell on your own. And of course that becomes independence, and this is when you have a multi-strategy approach. You can recognise when a word doesn't look right and know what types of alternative spellings you might like to use. And we're hoping to get our children at that stage, but of course that might be past the primary years, and it might be actually going into the secondary schooling years. Another perspective on this is that rather than it being developmental and being such a gentle developmental kind of focus, that individual spellers might actually be using many different ways of spelling as they tackle an unfamiliar word, and that the strategies for them to do this can be there from quite early age. And so the alternative is this notion of the waves. And this picture comes from a really great document that you can download for free from the South Australian government. There's a link down there, and it talks about how all of these strategies, a multi-strategy approach at least, can see the blending of lots of different strategies, and rather than thinking about students going along step by step, we might be more effective thinking about them using these multiple strategies. So what you can see here is sort of like you would expect in a developmental stage, that strategy 1, which is the spelling it like it sounds, is quite common as for younger readers, but then decreases as you get older and you start to spell from memory. So it's an interesting way to think about how those strategies are built. What we teach are the core words that we think students need to have, and high frequency word lists are really good for those purposes. And of course, we need to teach the vocabulary from content area units. That would be the Tier 2 information that we would use if we're thinking about vocabulary, the words that the students need in order to understand the content. Spelling needs to be included in our literacy blocks, and it should include whole class lessons and follow that up with practice, with individualised instruction during the writing process. So much of that is done with observations and consultations with students, although there are some summative and much more high-level assessment tasks which we will do in the tutorial. Again, we're going to do a spelling error analysis in the tutorial, which is something that you can use for as formative or a summative assessment. We need to know 4 different types of knowledge when we spell. One is the phonological knowledge, that's how words and letters combine to make sound. We also need to know what letters and word-letter combinations look like, what looks right, what doesn't look right. Our morphemic knowledge, which is the meaning of the words and how the words, the meaning changes when we change the spelling. Okay, from the word friend to friendship when I add the suffix ship, and how that changes the meaning. And the etymological knowledge, which is where the words come from, the derivation of words, and how that might help me as a speller to understand what the word means. So some students have difficulty with spelling. They can have poor visual sequential memory, which means they're unable to revisualize the letter sequences. They can have difficulty with phonological skills. That means the hearing of the phonemes, the sounds, and being able to segment and pick those sounds out. They can have a limited range of strategies, like we looked at in the wave there. They might rely on one of the first couple of strategies, which really doesn't let them go into that transitional or independent stage. And then there is a difficulty or a disability called dysorthography, which is related to language memory, phonological awareness, visual processing, and inefficient learning strategies. But it can also come out and be obvious in the classroom with a student who has difficulty actually writing and putting the letters in their correct formation on the page. And that's something you might want to follow up on if you think that it's of interest to you. It's not always just a messy handwriting issue. It can be dysorthographia. Okay, that's it for this one. I'll see you soon for the handwriting session.